In the heart of a city that buzzed with energy and ambition, where coffee-fueled conversations filled glass-walled offices and neon lights spilled onto crowded sidewalks, lived a young man named Noah. To most, he was no one special, just another face on the subway, just another name on a long list of employees, just another soul in a city too loud to notice the quiet ones. But Noah was different, not in the way the city admired, not in the way that drew crowds or sparked headlines. His difference was quiet. It didn't shine in the form of followers or flashy accomplishments. It existed in how he lived, in the stillness of his mornings, the silence of his evenings, and the calm with which he walked past distractions. While others posted their wins online and spoke often of their goals, Noah rarely shared a word. His ambitions weren't for display. They lived on the pages of his old notebook, hidden in the corners of his mind, fueled by something deeper than applause: purpose. He worked 6 days a week at a dusty little bookstore tucked between a chain cafe and a laundromat. It was the kind of place that smelled of ink and memory, where people came less for books and more for quiet. Noah liked it there. It matched his rhythm. Safe, slow, unglamorous, but honest. Each night after work, he returned to a small apartment with cracked paint on the walls and a wobbly desk by the window. That desk was his sanctuary. It was there he chased his dream, teaching himself how to code, not because it was trendy, but because he believed knowledge could unlock doors for people like him, overlooked, underestimated, and unheard. Noah didn't have mentors or a tech background. He had YouTube tutorials and determination. He didn't have the best laptop, just an old secondhand machine that crashed every few hours. But still he learned, one line of code at a time, one quiet night at a time. While others celebrated weekend plans, Noah stayed home, focused on creating something that could help others learn what he never had access to. People around him didn't get it. "Why do you isolate yourself so much?" a coworker once asked. "You should post more, share your journey," another encouraged. But Noah wasn't interested in showing off. He wasn't doing it for validation. He wasn't waiting for likes or retweets. He was building in silence, brick by brick, layer by layer, knowing full well that real growth doesn't need an audience. Still, some days were hard. There were moments when he felt invisible. At work, louder voices got recognized. In social circles, he often felt like a ghost in the room, always listening, rarely seen. Doubt crept in like fog, whispering, "Why are you trying so hard if no one notices?" But even in those moments, something inside him stayed lit, a quiet fire. He didn't want fame. He didn't crave the spotlight. He just wanted to create something real, something useful, something good. Because Noah understood something most didn't. Greatness isn't always loud. Progress doesn't always perform. Sometimes the most powerful things are built in silence, away from eyes, away from noise. And while the world slept on him, Noah was awake, grinding, growing, and glowing in his own quiet way. He wasn't the man people cheered for, not yet. He was the man they overlooked, but he was becoming the man they'd one day remember. Noah had made a choice: to grow in silence, to build without applause. But that choice came with a price not many could see. The city he lived in praised performers, not planners. It celebrated visibility, not quiet effort. And though he had found peace and purpose, it didn't protect him from the sting of being overlooked. He watched as co-workers who spoke more than they worked were promoted. He saw peers who shared carefully curated grind culture content online receive praise for half-hearted effort. Meanwhile, Noah poured hours into mastering code, perfecting syntax, fixing bugs that kept him up until sunrise. And yet, there were no standing ovations. At work, he was the quiet guy behind the counter, always polite, always punctual, but never noticed. In social gatherings, conversations drifted past him. Even when he tried to join, he was interrupted or ignored. It was like being surrounded by people who saw him, but didn't really see him. There were moments when it hurt more than he admitted. On some nights, after hours of focused learning, Noah would lean back in his creaky chair and feel the weight of it all. Was it worth it? He wondered. All this effort, all this discipline, for what? No one was watching. No one was clapping. Doubt crept in slowly, disguised as logic. You should give up. No one cares. You're wasting your time. And yet, he never quit. Because deep down, Noah didn't just want results, he wanted meaning. He remembered what it was like to be that teenager with no internet, no laptop, and no help. He remembered what it was like to feel stupid in a room full of smart people, simply because he hadn't been given the same tools. That memory burned quietly in him. It wasn't anger. It wasn't envy. It was drive. He didn't want fame. He didn't want revenge. He just wanted to build something that could make it easier for the next invisible kid. So while others posted motivational quotes, Noah lived one every single day. There were no weekend brunches, no loud celebrations, just early mornings, quiet sacrifices, and a dream that wouldn't let him rest. And the irony, people still misunderstood him. They called him antisocial, dull, too serious. Some even laughed at how boring his life seemed. What they didn't see were the notebooks filled with ideas, the open source projects he contributed to, the silent joy he felt every time he fixed a piece of code that had been broken for weeks. Noah's ambition didn't roar. It pulsed quietly like a heartbeat. What most people missed was this: there is a different kind of strength in choosing patience over performance, in choosing depth over attention. Noah was playing the long game. He knew that seeds grow in darkness before they bloom in light, and even though no one clapped when he reached his silent milestones, he marked them in his own way. A checkmark in a journal, a whispered yes under his breath, a quiet moment of pride. That was enough for now, because he believed in something bigger than recognition. He believed in alignment, living in a way that matched his values, even if no one noticed. And every time he wanted to give up, he remembered he wasn't chasing noise. He was chasing impact, and real impact takes time. So he kept going, and the world kept sleeping on him. But that was fine with Noah, because while the world slept, he was building, and one day they'd wake up to something they didn't see coming. 3 years had passed since Noah had made his quiet pact with himself, to work in the shadows, to grow without the noise. By now, he had grown used to the rhythm. Work at the bookstore by day, study and code deep into the night, sleep a few hours and repeat. What began as a personal journey had slowly transformed into something more. His once scattered notes had turned into structured outlines. His scattered thoughts were now refined goals. And most importantly, his dream, once vague and blurry, had taken clear shape. Noah was building an app. It wasn't flashy. It didn't use AI or promise to change the world like so many others. What it did promise, though, was accessibility. The app was a learning tool, simple, free, and focused on teaching coding fundamentals to students in underserved communities. It had been designed for the very version of Noah who once sat in front of borrowed computers, too afraid to ask for help. He didn't build it to impress investors. He built it because he knew the pain of feeling left behind. When it was finally done, there was no launch party, no email blast, just a quiet upload to an app store and a soft post on a community forum. That night, Noah went to sleep unsure if even 10 people would ever download it. But in a corner of the world, a teacher in a rural town discovered the app. She downloaded it, used it with her students, and sent Noah a message that made his hands tremble. "We've been waiting for something like this. Thank you." The next week, downloads tripled. Then came the email from a nonprofit focused on digital literacy. They had found the app, loved the design, and wanted to collaborate. Soon after, a regional education department reached out. They wanted to feature the app in schools across low-income areas. Noah sat in stunned silence. The thing he built alone, quietly in a tiny apartment with no recognition, was now making waves. But perhaps the most remarkable part, he never stepped into the spotlight. Even as requests came in for interviews and speaking engagements, No politely declined. He redirected attention to the app, to the mission, and to the students it was helping. He turned down offers from investors who wanted to scale it fast, with ads and paywalls. This was built to be free, he told them. It stays free. And that's when people really started to talk. Who was this mystery creator? Why wasn't he cashing in? Why did he stay anonymous, silent? The world didn't know what to do with someone who didn't crave attention. But No didn't care. He wasn't interested in being known. He was interested in being useful. He used the unexpected donations to expand the app's features, to create versions in different languages, and even to provide scholarships for students who wanted to go further. For the first time, people began to understand. The man they overlooked had been building something all along, and now they couldn't ignore it. His quiet success was beginning to speak, but it wasn't shouting. It was whispering to hearts across the world. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You just need to keep going. That night, for the first time in years, No stood by his apartment window, watching the lights of the city below. He didn't smile for the world. He smiled for himself. Not because he had made it, but because he hadn't quit. With each passing month, No's app grew, not in flash, but in reach. Thousands of students across cities and villages were now using the tool he had quietly built. Some learned coding for the first time. Some found the courage to dream beyond their surroundings. Some simply realized that someone, somewhere, had cared enough to make something just for them. But something else was happening too, something No didn't expect. He was becoming a symbol, without ever trying to be one. Emails poured in, not from companies, but from people. Young adults, high school students, single mothers trying to learn tech skills, immigrants struggling to adapt in new cities. They all reached out to say one thing: "Thank you for making me feel seen." No didn't always know how to respond. He had spent so many years working alone, it felt strange to be at the center of something. But slowly, he realized this wasn't about being a leader. It was about being a mirror. These people saw in him what he had once desperately looked for in others, a voice that said, "You're not too late, you're not too small, and you are absolutely not alone." He started responding more personally, not just with links or thanks, but with stories, his own struggles, his doubts, the nights he wanted to quit. He didn't try to sound perfect. He spoke honestly, and that honesty became his power. Before long, a new branch of the project was born, Quiet Cotters, a mentorship platform where anyone could join, learn, and grow at their own pace, with no pressure to perform for social media or impress anyone. Just quiet progress. No badges, no leaderboards, just guidance, community, and freedom to learn without fear. And the students showed up. Dozens, then hundreds, not just for lessons, but for the feeling that here, they didn't have to fight for attention. They didn't have to prove their worth. They just had to show up and grow. Noah taught them the same way he taught himself, bit by bit, with patience and clarity. "Don't rush," he would say. "Don't compare your progress to anyone else. Every line of code you write, every concept you learn, it matters. Even if no one claps for you now, keep going." He never raised his voice. He never wore a title, but the students began calling him mentor. For the first time, Noah was no longer walking alone. And the most beautiful part? He hadn't become famous. He had become useful. One evening, a student named Mikkel sent him a message that made Noah pause. "I've never had someone believe in me before. I'm not afraid anymore. I want to be like you, quiet but strong." Reading those words, Noah felt tears touch the edge of his smile. He thought back to his younger self, the lonely nights, the invisible effort, the silence that once felt like punishment, and he realized something powerful. He had become what he needed most, not just a creator, not just a builder, a guide, a quiet light in the dark. And now his mission was no longer just about an app, or a platform, or a project. It was about legacy, not the kind that gets etched in statues or shouted in headlines, the kind that lives in people, in changed lives, in awakened dreams. Noah didn't wear his success like a trophy. He wore it like a responsibility. Years passed. The city never stopped moving. Bigger buildings, louder voices, faster everything. But tucked away in the rhythm of it all was a man who had become a quiet force. Noah. He still lived in the same apartment, still walked to the same bookstore on weekends, even though he didn't need the job anymore. His app had reached countries he'd never visited. His mentorship program had helped thousands find direction. His impact, once invisible, had become undeniable. But you'd never know it if you passed him on the street. He didn't wear branded hoodies or take selfies on stage. He didn't record motivational speeches or post his journey online. His voice was still soft, his posture still humble. And yet, people listened when he spoke, not because he was loud, but because he had lived every word. One afternoon, as he sat on a bench at the community park, where students sometimes came to meet him, a young girl approached. She looked unsure, holding a worn-out notebook in her hand. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Mr. No?" He looked up with a warm smile. "Just no. I'm trying to build something," she said. "But I don't think I'm smart enough. Everyone online seems so far ahead." Noah took a breath, remembering a version of himself who once asked the same question, silently, into the dark. "You don't need to be ahead," he said gently. "You just need to begin, one quiet step at a time." She smiled, sat beside him, and they began to talk, not about fame or followers, but about purpose, about process, about building for meaning instead of attention. That was how Noah passed on his legacy, not through noise, but through presence. He never needed to be the loudest voice in the room, because he had become the voice people searched for when the world got too loud. News articles eventually caught on. The quiet genius behind a global movement, the man who built without bragging. Noah declined every feature request, every award show invitation. He'd reply simply, "Thank you, but this was never about me." Instead, he continued to build. He funded new education tools. He created safe learning spaces for students with disabilities. He launched scholarship programs for refugees, all without fanfare, all without flashing cameras. And through it all, he remained the same, disciplined, kind, focused. A man who had every reason to brag, but every reason not to. One day, during an online event for first-generation students, someone asked him, "Why did you never try to be famous?" Noah smiled. "Because I wasn't trying to be remembered," he said. "I was trying to make a difference. And if you do that right, you'll be remembered anyway, but for the right reasons." It wasn't a viral quote, but it changed the way many of them thought about success. Noah's story became something passed from one dreamer to another, not in lectures, but in late-night conversations, quiet coffees, and whispered hope. A reminder that greatness doesn't have to be loud, it just has to be real. He wasn't immortalized in statues, but in hearts. He lived on, the ones who quietly kept going, the ones who refused to give up just because no one clapped, the ones who chose impact over attention. They all carried a piece of Noah's light because he showed them, without ever trying to, that the quietest ones sometimes leave the loudest legacy.